Woo-wee. I was like, what is happening?
I don't know why it does that.
I know, it's so annoying because I'm like, just 1 second. Amanda just has to log on.
It's so strange. I don't know. We had to recently do something as a team with our Zoom because we were running into issues too.
Yeah. I guess I'll just try to do an Instagram story, like letting people know that as soon as Amanda gets on, that it'll load.
Yeah, or the only way around it, from what I think, is that you have to put a password on it. So either just wait and try again, or we can create a password.
Whatever you think is best and easiest.
Password will be Stevie.
How was last week's mastermind call that I missed out on?
You were missed. You were totally missed, but it was still really good. We talked all about working.
Oh yeah, new construction.
Yeah.
We'll have to do that again.
Yeah, definitely. So it's always great. You know, it's just like the other side of it. Like, how do you attract buyers to purchasing new construction? So, and having them reach out to you. So that's always such a great topic. But yeah, we can always do that again because I know that you've got some really great insight on that.
I love new construction buyers.
Me too. We have Karen on today's call, and I'm so excited because when it comes to tax prep and business planning and numbers, like, I don't know about y'all, but it's not my favorite thing to do. So I put it in the hands of a pro who can always point me in the right direction for getting it all set up. And
so before you had a CPA, were you doing it yourself?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, not Karen.
I was like, me?
Yeah, sorry. Amanda.
I was like, oh, okay.
Like Amanda, before you had hired a professional, were you ever doing it by yourself? Because I talked to a lot of real estate agents that do it solely by themselves, and I did it by myself for a little bit.
Oh my gosh, and I totally envy y'all. I have had a CPA. I've been in real estate for 3 years, and I've had a CPA for 10 years. When I moved here to Texas, I got a new CPA.
That's good.
And then recently switched to somebody that is a little bit more like real estate and like, business related, like in that aspect. And it's helped me tremendously. So Karen, I know what it's like when you've got like a really great CPA, like you hold on to them, or like tax prep, or, because there's kind of like, there's different areas from what I've seen, like in the CPA world, I guess, like there's like little branches.
Yeah, there definitely is branches. And I think there's like the same thing in like legal people can be generalists, which basically they have like an idea of everything. And then there's people that have specialties. And I think that oftentimes if you have your specialty for it, that's who you want to go to for things like that, because it allows you to really take advantage of, the tax code has way too much information in it. So
yeah. Whole bunch of foreign language to me.
Yeah, I'll promise you, I have to reread the tax code when I have things that I need. So it's normal.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. As people are coming in, I'll be sure to let them in. But everybody, welcome Karen, who is a CPA and tax strategist. She's been reaching out to Stevie and I for weeks. And
yeah, how do we connect?
I think it was through Instagram, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
She reached out and was like, hey, I love what y'all are doing, and I want to be on your mastermind because I think that I can add value to everybody. And so we're like, okay, let's do it. Mm-hmm. We're all for extra value because let's be honest, Stevie, we don't know it all, right?
We do not know it all. I am not all knowing, but I can always get you the answer.
Always. So awesome. Karen, thank you so much for joining on tonight's call with us. If you would give us a great introduction of yourself, and then, you guys let us know what your questions are so that we can get them answered before the end of the call.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for having me. I really think that paying attention to your numbers and going through the whole year and not waiting until the very end is why you can relieve some of your stress as preparing for your taxes. So that's why I really wanted to get on here. So I think that I really want, as like modern entrepreneurs, you really need to pay attention to it. And if you take advantage of those tax strategies, it'll really help you grow even more. And I think that's so important. So a little bit about me. I have been a CPA, a licensed CPA for about 10 years or so. I have been a controller of firms working in-house, but then I've also, for the last 6 years, been a tax strategist and tax compliance at a large firm, large national firm. I have, the reason why I'm kind of on the real estate side is because my husband's an agent here in Boca Raton, Florida, where I live. So I've had an insight for years now as he's been growing his business. And I am a mom of 2 little kids. So any of you that are moms out there, you know how crazy moments can be. But I really, really love what I do. And I love watching people understand and it clicking a little bit. So I'm happy to answer your questions and anything that you guys have. I know that Amanda sent me some of the questions that you guys had already. And if Amanda works, I can jump into some of those and then we can go from there.
Perfect. That sounds great.
So I think kind of the main broad question that I think any tax accountant or anybody kind of gets is the question of what's an expense? Like, what can I actually take as an expense? And I think the first thing to note here is that you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, whether you're having a tax accountant prepare your return or you have a bookkeeper, let's say, running your books for you. The most important thing is you want to be able to categorize it. So you want to be able to pay attention to what's coming in from an income perspective. And then also you actually want to pay attention to your expenses. So having one individual bank account that you're using for your business, setting up one credit card you're using for that business is important because it's going to help you track it. Instead of having everything at 5 different places, you're keeping it in one place. And so then I think the next step for that, if you keep that in a good weather, like I said, it's on an Excel because you don't want to invest fully in doing a QuickBooks Online or something right now. That can be something you can get down the road if you're not there, or maybe you are and you can push towards it. But then the next step becomes the question of what can I actually deduct? And the most important thing, the tax code, and you probably have heard tax accountants, if you've ever been around them, say an expense has to be ordinary and necessary for your business. So what that basically means is pretty much anything that would be normal for your business. So for a real estate agent, from the staging costs for if you're staging a house to the flyers you're getting for the property that you have a listing on, to expenses for you as an individual to grow yourself or your marketing expenses. All of those things are considered deductible. And they will lower the gross amount that you have. But then the question becomes tracking it, right? And then the next whole thing that tax accountants really go into is, receipts, and I have to have, record of it. The IRS has gotten a lot better, and I think it's important. I have been through multiple audits with clients in general, just because they come up and it's reality. It normally isn't a normal thing. And the IRS, I will tell you right now, is very strapped and doesn't have a lot of time for it. But the most important thing is that agents want to know how organized you are. So if I can give you any little bit of a hint on that, recording your expenses in something like a QuickBooks, where you know all of the expenses from your credit card or your bank statement coming in, that's enough for you to show that you are keeping track and producing the business expense. If you're not running a lot of personal things through there too, keeping your personal and your business separate, that's really important. And then what you want to do is basically say, okay, if you have a big item for a receipt, my general rule of thumb is if it's a really big item, let's say a really big expense, a new computer, or you took a couple big clients out to a big meal and you paid a lot for it, that's when you want to definitely keep the receipt. Or in QuickBooks Online, which is really handy, you can actually take a picture of it and include it on the QuickBooks Online, so your accountant or anybody can actually get that in case of an audit.
I really love QuickBooks, and it's so inexpensive. I think I pay like $20 a month. So to me, it's like, that's really affordable. And I really love how easy QuickBooks is. Like, I feel as though it's very user friendly, and you can set rules in there where it automatically categorizes certain things that you're continuously doing or using, and syncs right up with all of your bank accounts, has these nice reports. Like, when I was buying a house, the lender was like, I need a profit and loss sheet, and I'm like, okay, and I go in QuickBooks and print it off. Like, I mean, I have no idea how to really do that. Like, I don't know. So
and their app too, right? So like you can log on the
your
computer.
miles.
Yeah, or you can log on to the app too, and like you can just swipe like what the expense is for. And I do like you said, Stevie, you can log like other accounts to it. And like if you have an expense that, like, I write off some of my cell phone bill because it's cell phone and internet, all of those things, and I use the majority of my cell phone for work, and so I'm able to pay for account, but then I can split it and then create a rule for it. So it goes a certain percent to my business account, but then a certain percent of it is not considered a business expense because, I know that not 100% of it is just to business.
I always run by and I'll be like, hey, I'm gonna get this thing, or what do you think about this thing? Like, do you think I could write this off? And she's like, oh, well, it sounds like something you need for your business. And I'm like,
ordinary and necessary, right? And I think remember, at the end of the day, if you're running this as a business, if you could see, I mean this in all honesty, if you could see a lot of the expenses that people have on businesses, so try not to get too scared. Remember that this is taking expenses for a business is appropriate. And, making sure, the big thing, like I said, is keeping your personal and your business separate. That's a huge help from the IRS's perspective. They then can easily know that, okay, I'm keeping this as a business structure. And it doesn't matter, so because that was kind of goes to one of the other questions, was of that structure of a, LLC, or should I be an S Corp or a corporation, and understanding that. I'm just going to hit on it briefly. The federal code for the purposes of this, an S corporation is not is only a federal designation. So when I say that, I mean that when you're at your individual state level, each state you're either going to be an LLC or you're going to choose a corporation or something. At the federal level is where you choose the S corporation versus and so the LLC designation basically means it's either a partnership, an S corporation, or you are what's considered a disregarded entity. All a disregarded entity is that it's going to be on your personal income tax. That's all it's going to be. So and basically you would be a disregarded entity if it's like single member. It's only you that owns the business, and that's it. And you haven't had a designation otherwise. It gets a little, I could get into detail, and if you guys have more questions about it, I can, but it also can be a question of when do you get there, and people have a lot of questions of that, of, oh, should I be a level? Should I now jump to being an S Corp? And it's kind of,
like, depending on your income, I do get asked that a lot. Like, should I get my LLC now? Do I make enough money to get that? And then like my CPA advised me at a certain point, like, okay, we need to switch this to an S Corp.
The important thing, just to, like I said, briefly hit on it, is what an S Corp allows for is it adds a layer of protection, and it also allows you for an ability to take a portion of your income and not make it self-employment income. So and that's the most important part. So when you are on your individual Schedule C, which is most people do, you start an LLC, a business, you're doing it on your own. You structure it so that you don't have to file another return. You don't want to have to file another business return, right? You just want to file your personal income tax. And so what you do is you report it all on there. But what happens is if you make, let's say, $100,000 after expenses, what ends up happening is that full amount is taxed at not only what you're considered, what's IRS, we call the tax bracket, whatever your rate is, 20%, 15%, whatever your rate. but it also tax on self-employment taxes. Because if you think about anybody that's a W-2 individual, there's a self-employment taxes of Medicare and Social Security that have to be paid in. And so that's what the S Corp saves you from. A piece of it's going to be come out as just self-employment. As like employment taxes are paid for you. And the other part isn't. And so you get to take the rest of it out at a reduced bracket, basically. So that's all it is, but it's hard. You can't it's hard to say, oh, this is your number, this is your break point, because it's also dependent on a lot of other situations for tax planning and also where you are for the purposes of your own strategy of where you plan on going. If you're married, the planning for the whole strategy. I kind of think of tax planning and tax strategy as a complete picture, because it's important to know that, any tax accountant out there that's going to file, because I really wouldn't advise most people to file their own S corporation return. It gets a little bit more nitty gritty. You're going to have, somebody's going to charge you for it. So you have to think about that. And those are just all the steps of kind of that thought process. And it's important for it.
Well, those tax fees that you pay to the CPA, isn't that a write-off?
Yeah. Definitely a deduction without a doubt.
I really have no write-offs, or any kind of deductions or anything. I feel like I'm always pulling through my accounts and I'm what can I use?
Mm-hmm. So I think the things that are sometimes really missed are the things that are so obvious in our life, right? And people talk about this. It gets a little bit different when you're in an S Corp level, but on an individual level, for example, home office deduction is a really big one. Obviously, mileage is an important one. And I will tell you, from being a CPA and my husband being a real estate agent, I know how much he drives. I know how much he uses his car. I know how much it's primarily used for that. Same thing goes for cell phone, as you were talking, Amanda. He's always on the phone. So I know how it operates. And you have to remember that part of that then becomes, it's reasonable. And so what happens as tax accountants, we look at it and say, well, they use it about 75 to 80% of the time, or whatever the number will be, whatever the comfortable level is. Yes, right. If you're a person that is kind of not fully, let's say you're not fully doing real estate as a full-time career. I don't know, let's say you're not doing that fully, you're not fully engaged in it. Maybe you're transitioning out of another career. Maybe you don't have it at those high numbers, but the majority of agents you're talking about, the cell phone usage is huge, mileage is big. And it doesn't, once again, mileage, yes, you can track it. It's awesome if you do. Big kudos to you if you do, because that's amazing. I know that from my perspective, it's I know the majority of it's used for it, and I can build a percentage base for it.
Yes. Because let's be honest, tracking it is a pain. Even with the apps and everything, but
what did people do before apps? Did people actually write down and they have a little notebook in their car and write this down? I would always forget. That's what's so nice about the app. Is it it's Bluetooth or something, and it automatically syncs? So whenever I log in, all my trips are already in there, and all I have to do is swipe business or personal. It's so freaking easy to track your miles, in my opinion.
Or you get an oil change or your tires rotated, know the mileage, and then look at it at the end of the year and then calculate from there.
I honestly, I will tell you, Amanda, that's how I operate with my husband, for example. At the beginning of I always make him get an oil change. He leases his car. That's one of my expenses on his S corporation that I run. But we operate as, I look at it at the beginning of the year, I look at it at the end of the year, and I say, this is reasonable. I know where he is.
So how do you feel about realtors leasing cars? Is that some kind of write-off?
Yeah, definitely. So when you lease a car, so perfect example would be my husband. He leases a luxury car, and it's all a business expense. It's every part of it. The lease payments are, and it gets fully deducted off the business. What ends up happening is there's a little bit of things you have to do extra when you have an S corporation, is you have to actually add back the personal usage onto your W-2 that you're required to do each year. So let's say you do 20% personal usage. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but basically you can ask your tax accountant about it. There's a table that the IRS uses to say, this was the starting value of the lease, and this is the average amount that has to go back onto it. And then anything personal. So, but then you get to take everything. So for example, on my husband's, everything goes on there, from additional oil changes that might be there for the leasing. If he has to get tires, new tires within the middle of the leasing period, those are all deductible now.
Car wash. I have a monthly car wash subscription, so that
car wash.
I can write it off.
You get to take car washes regardless of whether or not you take actual cost or mileage. You get to take both. But that's leasing a car is a great, and honestly, I think for a real estate agent, leasing a car is really a good option because, let's be realistic, you want it to be kind of a, you want to be up in kind of, at least, I mean, I live in Boca Raton, so I don't know if anybody knows the area, but it's
bougie.
Yeah. Yes. So there is a certain look, and it's just what it is. So what we do is, we just make sure that the car is, we make sure it has the most miles on it. That's probably the most important thing for my husband's lease, because he spends way too much time in his car.
I know. I'm like, if I was to lease a car, which I don't, I'm like, I would need to do the max amount of miles because I feel like I drive so much. And I know Amanda has mentioned that she has a lease, but you go over the miles.
Yeah. So I have built a relationship with the guy there at the dealership, and I get him waived every time that I turn my car in. And
you can turn it in early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They give me an early turn in, and then they waive my mileage fees. So you just got to get in there. Stevie, you know how to negotiate. You just get in there and run all over them with it. Yeah. Tell them that you'll get into the next car right there on the spot, and they're likely to just waive it.
And I think that then you have to also look at it too, if you think about it from a tax deduction point, that extra, even though it's a pain that you have to pay, it's still a deductible expense. You have to look at that too. Those are things that are, that is a deduction for you. I think the only thing with having a car that's important to remember is your business usage. If you are somebody that doesn't, that uses it for personal usage the majority of the time, then it's not advantageous to do it. So you need to make sure you're aware of that. I think that's the biggest part of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We use Nick's car for literally everything other than, if his car's in the shop or something.
Yeah.
But that's really great knowledge to know on the mileage thing. And like Stevie said, y'all, if you have QuickBooks, download the app and hook it up to your maps. And then, like she said, you can swipe if it's a business or a personal, or at the beginning of the year, figure out what your mileage is, take a picture of it in your phone, go get your tires rotated, get your oil changed, whatever it is. And at the end of the year, do the same thing. And then your CPA will be able to take a certain percentage and then use that for write-off. On the topic of vehicles, somebody asked if I purchase a vehicle and have it wrapped or put a logo on it, do you get to write the car off, but no longer the mileage? So do you get to only write off the car itself or the mileage?
Yeah, so you got to be real careful with that because you don't want to make it can't be like an advertising expense, for example, just because you wrap the car. So you want to be careful with that for it. I've seen real estate agents do that. From my experience, I think you're going to get a better bang for your buck out of, if your business usage on your car is higher, you're going to get a better usage out of it for that, particularly when you're talking about the lease, if you have a lease payment or anything like that, because you can, even if you don't have a lease payment, remember that you can still take all the other expenses at your business usage amount. So if you have from your, the tires, the repairs, anything that you have, car washes, of course, that you have on the car, the insurance on the car, those can all be broken down as being either business or personal usage. I use 80-20 in my head, or 75, 25. That's just how my brain works for this. From my experience, you're really, you can be comfortable knowing that your usage is all of those things, and you can take a piece of it and say, okay, those are all available for me to take as a deduction, because that is a business. Once again, back to my ordinary and necessary. You cannot get to listings. You cannot get to showings unless you have your car. So remember that. That's something really important for you to remember.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. There's another question on here that I thought was a great question. Is there anything specific that we should look for when hiring a CPA for the first time? And do you recommend that they specialize in working with real estate agents?
So I think the most important thing you want to pay attention to is depending on where you are in your career, depending on where you are in your personal life with taxes, it's really important I do think it's important to ask the CPA certain, but they should know things about what type of deductions a real estate agent is going to have. But at the same time, I will tell you, if let's say locally you want somebody and you don't want somebody that's a virtual, CPA. You want somebody that you can go walk in and hand your stuff to every year. I don't want to say, oh, that person has to be a person that specializes in real estate, because the reality is that most tax accountants do understand what can be deducted. I think what I would say more so is arm yourself with understanding what deductions are available, doing things like this, understanding where you can push the limits and say a little bit, because it's also important to have a CPA that's your advocate, because CPAs, it's reality, they have tax filing deadlines. And if you're not someone that's front of mind, or some type of structure where you've set up where it is a regular check-in with you, a quarterly check-in or something like that, you're going to get to, March, April, February, March of every year, and they're going to go, did you give me your stuff? And they're going to just pump it in. And if you don't want to extend, they're just going to give you the return. So I think it's important to have, in particular, this is really important, as self-employed individuals, it's really important that you have to make sure you're paying in estimated tax payments. And so that's part of what a CPA does, or someone that is knowledgeable about it. I don't want to just say CPA, because there are people that practice without having their license. And it's important just to make sure that you communicate with them. You're saying, I've had a crazy year. I've had a great year and I'm way up from last year, or, hey, I'm lower than I was last year. There's been some things going on in my personal life, so that then you can adjust for it. Because I can tell you anything, the most important thing is you don't want to have to pay more into tax ahead of time than you have to, because that money is more valuable to you in your pocket every day than sitting at the government. So that's kind of my advice from looking for a CPA. Doesn't have to be, it definitely is helpful, but also arm yourself with some of the questions.
Absolutely. And Braden, I can speak on that just because, I had a CPA when I moved to Texas. I got a new CPA. And while he is great at businesses, like he's Nick's CPA, but Nick runs a business with 10 employees. Nick runs a totally business than I do. And so while he's great at his business, I decided recently to transition to somebody who more works with real estate agents, and it's been a game changer. He's talked me through a lot of things that I had no idea about. He saved me so much money. We're able to check in quarterly so that he knows, just like you were saying, Karen, like he knows, like, okay, I'm having a great year. Okay, but what does that really mean in terms of my numbers last year, so that we can pivot and pay a little bit more of taxes. He can tell me how much I should be allocating, setting aside. And then like upfront things. So like I let him know last year, two things. One, Nick and I are getting married. So how should we strategize our taxes with both being self-employed? And then two, I want to buy a home. So I don't want to write off everything, because I've got to show some sort of money for the lender to lend me money on our home. So, talking with somebody who's knowledgeable like that definitely helps. And then on that topic, Karen, I know you're based in Florida, but being a tax strategist and business planner, CPA, can you help individuals along different state lines?
Yeah, definitely. So as a CPA, you can practice and file tax returns in any state. The most important thing is you just want to make sure, in my practice that I operate right now, I do a lot of high net worth individuals in particular that I file across many state lines. Some returns have upwards of 15 to 20 state returns. So it is common. That's very normal. I think the most important thing when you're looking, then going back to getting a CPA for that, is just making sure that that person is aware that they should be filing, or certain things for your particular state, which as a CPA, I can easily look up on the instructions for each state return. So that's very possible. So
awesome. And if somebody had questions for you regarding either business planning or taxes or, additional write-offs or what they should, maybe they're lost. They're like, hey, I don't know what to do or where to start. How can they reach you?
So I definitely have my Instagram handle. I'll probably get a lot more active in that. I am, for you all's knowledge, I don't even know if Amanda and Stevie know this. I've been in private practice for a lot of years. As I had said, I'm now leaving the practice and going off on my own. I have my Instagram handle, which I'll be a lot more active on, as well as an email. And then if you follow me on Instagram, as soon as my website is up and running, you can contact me there as well. Which I'll give you guys. But honestly, I'm happy to help, even just to answer some questions. I think that taxes can be scary for entrepreneurs. And it's an area that if you stay on top of it, from keeping QuickBooks, keeping track of your expenses, checking in, possibly even with yourself. I will tell you from my perspective with my husband, granted, I'm a CPA and I do his books, so it makes my life a lot easier. But I narrow them down. I mean, I know exactly how much to the penny that I pay in by 12/31 of every year, December 31st. I know his books. I paid it in. I pay it on in W-2 salary check, and I'm done. And so those are things that I know. I know exactly.
Right.
Like I love it. I'm a total tax geek. When I get to the end and I file my returns, and I'm like, yes, I'm within like a couple $100 of how much I owe. I'm like happy. Like I feel like totally geeky about it. I'm like, yeah. So, I think that part of it is that finding someone too that just enjoys what they're doing and working with you. There's tons of people out there that are available. I've from obviously around the corner type of people to on Instagram, there's people that are definitely available to help. So feel comfortable with your numbers. If you know them and you pay attention, that's the most important thing for you to get ahead and not have to pay a lot of tax in.
Well, I think that with taxes, I know a lot of real estate agents. I mean, I don't know about on this call or not, but probably that are going to be watching the replay that just don't have it together. And if I'm being honest, like my first year in real estate, I did it myself. And I remember at the end of the year scrambling to get it together and go through each month and track all my expenses. And it was extremely stressful for me because I also was busy. And I was like, I am never going to put myself in this position again, and I'm going to be on top of it. And ever since then, it's been like I've been getting better and better with it. And then obviously I hired somebody, but like with QuickBooks, like I was like checking in quarterly. Then I started checking in monthly. And then now like Amanda always like pops in or started doing weekly. And I was like, shoot, I'm going to do it weekly. And now I'm like doing it daily. And I feel as though it makes me feel so much better. And that this is a business. I make a lot of money. Like we need to be serious about this. No matter if you do a couple deals a year, or you're doing, let's say 100,000, I feel as though like the thing is like a lot of us, or at least I don't have anyone in my life to be like, this is what you're supposed to do. And like when you're getting your real estate license, like no one is teaching you. I mean, maybe there's a sporadic tax class or something if you really search for it, but like no one ever taught me how to organize all this and expenses and what I had no idea what I was doing. So I felt as though this would be really beneficial to do because maybe like some people on here might not have it all together. And honestly, I feel like you just got to start somewhere and get QuickBooks, have it sync, and start making it part of your routine to go through every single week and just swipe through on your expenses, swipe through on your mileage, and you're just going to feel so much better about your business because it's a kind of a scary feeling. Like I have people say all the time, they're like, how much money do you put aside? And I'm like, okay, I know you've been in the business like 3 years now. Like, why are you asking me this question? And I had a friend who couldn't even pay her taxes and had to get a loan out 1 year. And I think she's still paying. And it was like a ridiculous interest rate, like not setting that amount aside for your taxes. I just feel is like really beneficial. So maybe you needed to hear this conversation today to start getting things in order and organized and start researching and getting it together, because this is a business, no matter if you're doing 1 deal a month or 5 deals a month. So I really appreciate Karen, you coming on, and I guess if anyone has any questions, reach out to her, not me.
Reach out to me, and honestly, I'm happy to answer. And if you guys ever need anything else, because I really believe in, one of the words I kept on thinking about, Stevie, when you're saying that, was becoming empowered. Like, feels so good when you're like, I know what I'm making, and I know what my in figures are, and it just feels good. And so I think it's important.
It's being in control of your business, right? Like, it's either you're in control of your business or your business is running you, so it's one of those where you've got to, man up, know these numbers, know what you should be doing. There's no adulting manual or like entrepreneur manual, real estate 101. Like, this stuff isn't covered, but this is why you leverage pieces out that you might not be amazing at. And instead you hire somebody like Karen, who just blows it out of the water. Like, some of the things that you were talking about in the beginning of this call, I was like, that's like a whole bunch of words that like mean nothing to me. Whole bunch of knowledge.
That's why we hire professionals to do the job.
Because you're so passionate about this, and that's why you get somebody that just rocks it. So
yes, I love it. Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good week.
See you guys next week. Bye.